Long before the sandals, the photo, and the midnight scratching, there was just me and my heartbreak. After 7 years with someone I thought I'd marry, I caught him in our bed with someone I'd only met once at a New Year's party. She wore one of my old sweaters. He looked like he'd already moved on. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there like I was watching someone else's life implode. 3 weeks later, I was in a rental on Elmsworth Drive in Springfield, Missouri. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, brick facade, a creaky porch I pretended gave it character. It was a cul-de-sac where people waved from their driveways but never stopped to say hello. That was fine. I wanted quiet. I wanted anonymity. I wanted the kind of invisibility that comes with a fresh zip code. The first few weeks passed like fog. I took freelance gigs, mostly digital book covers for indie authors, and worked late into the night, half on purpose, half out of habit. I lived on cold brew and the kind of snack food meant for teenagers. I left the house once every 3 days max. My only consistent entertainment was the woman across the street. Every morning at 7 a.m. sharp, she trimmed her hedges. Not in the casual, this bush is getting out of control way, but in a mechanical, near-military precision way. She had a jaw like a blade and eyes like a winter road, empty, cold, unmoved by weather or mood. I'd try not to stare, but I always did. She never waved, never looked directly at me. By June, I was ready to reclaim some space, not just in the house, but in my head. So I decided to host a yard sale. It felt good to pull old boxes from the garage and sort through everything I no longer wanted to carry forward. A ceramic owl lamp from his mom, a box of engagement party favors I never mailed out, the robe with his initials monogrammed in gold thread. I set up tables, priced everything cheap, and opened shop by 9 a.m. The neighborhood was quiet, but a few people stopped by. An old man bought a typewriter and told me about the poetry he used to write. A teenager argued over a lava lamp. I was starting to feel lighter. Then, at exactly 11:20 a.m., a black SUV pulled up and parked across the driveway. The woman who stepped out looked like she belonged at a real estate seminar. Neatly ironed blouse, expensive perfume, tense jaw. She didn't browse. She walked straight to the Italian sandals sitting on the edge of the table. They were a gift from my ex, purchased in Rome. I never wore them. Too narrow, too pointed, too much like something his new girlfriend might wear. I slapped a $5 sticker on them, the price of catharsis. She picked them up, read the tag, then looked at me. "Is this a joke?" she asked, voice low and clipped. "No," I said. "Just trying to clean house." She stared at me for a moment longer, then turned without another word and walked back to her car. Didn't buy a thing. 15 minutes passed. I had started folding the table when another car door slammed. This time it was a man. Large, balding, maybe late 40s. Sweat soaked through his t-shirt in patches. He moved like someone who expected people to get out of his way. "You think you're funny," he barked. I stood still. "Excuse me? Trying to humiliate my wife? $5? Is that what you think she's worth?" His breath smelled like chewing tobacco and rage. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. He stepped forward, too close. "You know what this looks like? Like you're calling her trash." "I'm sorry," I said, hands up. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Don't call me sir. You think you're better than us?" Across the street, the hedgewoman's garage door opened. She stood in the shadows, arms crossed, watching. Then, from behind me, a voice. "Hey buddy, I'm filming you. I suggest you walk away." It was the teenager from earlier, holding up his phone. The man froze, looked between us, spat on my lawn, and muttered, "We'll be seeing you around." I didn't sleep that night, but the worst part hadn't even begun. 3 days later, I found the envelope taped to my door. No name, no return address. Inside was a Polaroid. It was me, sitting on the porch during the yard sale. The sandals were on the table behind me. In the distance, the woman was standing on her own lawn looking directly into the camera, smiling, scrawled below in shaky penmanship, and $5 was generous. I stared at it for a full minute, my stomach tightening like a knot pulled by invisible fingers. I called the police. An officer came out, listened patiently, looked at the photo, then said what I expected. It's not a direct threat. No damage, no trespassing. Could be a prank. But someone was close enough to take this, I said. They knew where I lived. He shrugged. I'd suggest keeping your doors locked. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I thanked him and locked the door behind him. That night, I dragged a chair into the hallway and sat there with the lights off, watching the front windows. Nothing. Until 2:40 a.m. A sound like metal on mesh, slow, steady scratching. I held my breath. Got up, turned on the porch light. No one was there. But muddy footprints led from the yard to my window. I installed cameras the next morning, ordered online, next day shipping. When they arrived, I placed one facing the street and one pointed directly at the window. But they never caught anything. No figures, no movement, no faces, just the sound, the scratching. Every few nights, always at 2:40 a.m. I stopped going outside. Groceries were delivered. I parked 2 blocks away and walked home with my keys clutched tight in my fist. I thought about reporting it again, but what could I say? Someone may or may not be watching me, but the cameras show nothing. One morning, I found my trash bins turned over. Nothing stolen, just tipped. Another day, a ceramic garden gnome I'd never seen before sat near the steps. Small, grinning, chipped at the nose. I knocked on a few doors asking if it belonged to anyone. No one claimed it. The woman across the street watched me the whole time, arms crossed, unblinking. I stopped knocking. I started keeping every light on inside the house. I set timers. I kept music playing. But still, some nights I'd find that same scratching. I moved a bookshelf in front of the window. Didn't help. A week before my lease ended, I began packing. I didn't post anything online. I told no one I was leaving, not even my landlord, just mailed in the notice and set the move-out date. The night before the truck came, I slept on the floor, phone in hand. No scratching, no sound, just the quiet weight of being watched. In the morning, I drove to a motel on the other side of town and waited for the movers to finish. That night I checked into a new place, 3 neighborhoods away, a rental with an attached garage and no windows near the street. I felt safer, until I went to a thrift shop 2 towns over weeks later and saw her again. Not up close, not moving, just standing between 2 racks of clothing watching. She didn't buy anything. She didn't approach. She was just there, watching. It's been a year. I live in a different city now, closer to my sister. No porch, no lawn, no neighbors. But I still check every window. I still wake at 2:40 a.m. And sometimes, in the silence, I wonder if the woman was ever angry about the sandals, or if maybe it was something simpler. Maybe she just didn't like being seen. Maybe that's what triggered it. A stranger in her neighborhood, with new eyes and a fresh past. Someone who noticed too much, or not enough. Sometimes the danger isn't in what you throw away. It's in what you choose to see, and who sees you seeing it. Not all quiet neighborhoods are peaceful, and not all people who wave are harmless. I didn't move to Wyoming for the mountains or the silence or even the clean air. I moved because I had nowhere else left to go. Sheridan was just a name on a map when I pointed blindly, packed a rental truck, and drove until the road got lonely. It wasn't peace I wanted. It was escape. From my marriage, which had ended with more venom than words. From the pressure of a second novel I couldn't finish. From the feeling that somewhere, somehow, I'd already seen the best parts of my life slide by. Red Birch Road isn't even a real road on GPS. Just a gravel stretch flanked by thick woods and a few scattered homes, all spaced so wide you could scream and maybe only spook a deer. My place sat on a low hill with a porch that faced west and a back door that looked straight into the trees. I told people I liked the quiet, but I didn't speak to anyone if I could help it. My groceries came from a gas station 10 miles down. My mail came 3 times a week, and the only time I waved was by mistake. The last neighbor I met was back in Seattle. He borrowed a ladder and gave it back with a bent rung. Then he slept with my wife. So I figured I was done with neighbors. It was a Tuesday when I first saw him. October 16th. The wind had picked up early that evening, rustling the leaves outside like dry paper, and the sun was all but gone by 7. I had a mug of tea in one hand and a half-written paragraph on my laptop when someone knocked on the front door. Not a banging, not desperate, just a quick, almost polite 2-knock tap. I stood up slow. Out here, I didn't get visitors, not unless something had gone wrong. Through the peephole, I saw a man in his late 30s. He looked soaked through, rain dripping off the bill of a ball cap, a backpack slung over one shoulder. His smile was tight but respectful. "Sorry to bother," he said when I opened the inner door, chain still on. "I was camping near the trailhead and got caught in the storm. Any chance I could crash here tonight? Just need a dry spot. Floor's fine." There was something in his eyes. Tired, yes, but too steady. No panic, no pleading, like he'd already rehearsed this. "I'm sorry," I said. "I don't let strangers in. There's a diner down the road, about 4 miles. They might be able to help." He nodded, looked off toward the woods, then back at me. "Sure, no problem." And he turned and walked away. That should have been the end of it. I locked every window in the house, flipped on the porch light in the back, and tried to shake off the unease. But the trees behind my house don't care if you're uneasy. They just keep standing. That night I couldn't sleep. Not well. Every sound felt bigger. At 2:30 a.m., I got up, just needing to see. I walked upstairs and looked out the back window. There was a campfire burning maybe 200 yards out in the trees, just far enough to be hidden from the road, and beside it, sitting completely still, was the same man. In his lap, glinting in the firelight, was something long and metallic. A rifle. I backed away from the window like it might explode. My pulse thundered. The air felt thick with static. I grabbed my phone and dialed the local sheriff's office. Told them what I saw. A stranger with a gun. A campfire too close to the house. "Storm's got most of our units stretched," the dispatcher said. "We'll send someone, but it may be a while." 20 minutes crawled by. I stayed low in the hallway, shotgun in hand, barely breathing. At 2:52 a.m. I looked again. The fire was still there, but the man wasn't. That was worse. I crept downstairs and checked the front and back doors, both locked. I was about to retreat when I heard it. A soft, metallic clink. It came from the back. The padlock on the outdoor latch. The one I'd secured earlier. I moved cautiously, heart trying to punch its way out of my chest. Through the kitchen window I saw it, hanging open. The lock, snapped in half, lay in the grass like a dead insect. I backed away. Then came the knock. From the front door. 2 sharp, deliberate knocks. Not loud, not frantic. Like someone asking if now was a better time. I didn't move, didn't speak. I stood there, shotgun half raised, while the ticking of the wall clock counted every second. He didn't knock again. 10 minutes later, red and blue lights lit up the front of the house like a fireworks show. 2 deputies searched the woods with flashlights and radio chatter. I stood on the porch like a man pulled from a dream. They found the fire still warm. No sign of the man, but behind it, in a shallow dugout pit, they uncovered a nylon bag. Inside were duct tape, a crowbar, zip ties, and an old flip phone. Only one contact on it. Home. That bag chilled me more than the gun. It wasn't the gear of a camper. It was the gear of someone who came prepared. This wasn't accidental, one deputy said quietly. He picked a spot with cover, no road access. He's been out here a while. I filed a report, but they had no one to arrest. No prints, no clear crime. They told me to keep my doors locked and maybe invest in a trail cam. I bought 2 the next morning, and I didn't sleep for 3 days. Paranoia is not a straight line, it loops. At first you tell yourself you're overreacting, then you remember the bag, the knock, the fact that the fire didn't start itself. I kept the shotgun beside my bed and started leaving the porch lights on all night. Motion sensors too. 1 in front, 1 in back. Nothing ever tripped them. I wanted to believe he'd moved on, that maybe my house was the wrong stop in whatever madness he was carrying with him, that I'd dodged the worst of it, until 2 weeks later. I was leaving the post office in Sheridan. Just a quick drop-off, an envelope of edits for my publisher. I unlocked the truck, threw the door open, and noticed something tucked under the driver's side wiper. A folded piece of paper flapping in the wind. I unfolded it slowly, braced for anything. 5 words, in thick, uneven handwriting. "You're lucky I don't mind the rain." My hand tightened around the paper until it crumpled. He'd been here, watching, close enough to touch my truck, close enough to walk away unseen. I told the sheriff, filed a second report. They said it was unsettling but not actionable. No direct threat, no damage. Could have been a prank, one officer offered. "Pranks don't leave crowbars in the woods," I said. He didn't argue. I drove home with the truck doors locked and parked facing the road. That night, I set an alarm for 2:30 a.m. and sat in the dark with the shotgun resting on my lap. But no fire came, no knock, no anything. And somehow, that felt worse. The seasons shifted fast. October turned brittle. By mid-November, the trees had gone bare and the wind howled across Red Birch Road like a voice too far away to understand. I stopped writing, couldn't focus. I told my agent I was between things. Truth was, I couldn't sit still long enough to write a sentence without checking the windows, without looking over my shoulder. I saw the woman with the dog again. Across the road. She waved. I didn't wave back. Not because I was rude, but because the world had changed. The knock changed it. The fire changed it. One night I tried sleeping with the windows open, just to test myself, just to see if maybe I could go back to normal. At 3:12 a.m. I woke up to the faintest crunch of gravel near the woods. I shut them fast, stayed on the floor until dawn. I stopped leaving the house for anything but essentials. I used the post office box only once more, then canceled it. I watched the woods like they owed me an answer. They never gave one. I still live here. I tell people I enjoy the solitude, the clean air, the views. But the truth's simpler. I like knowing who's coming, and more importantly, who isn't. No one comes up Red Birch Road without a reason. There's no foot traffic, no dog walkers, no kids knocking on doors. So if someone shows up, you pay attention. That night in October taught me something I didn't learn in the city. Danger doesn't always roar in. Sometimes it knocks. Calm, measured, like it belongs. And if you answer, you might never get to close the door again. Not every knock is an invitation. Trust your instincts. Solitude can protect you, but only if you remember that isolation doesn't always mean safety. Sometimes it just means you're alone when someone decides to try the handle. There's something funny about trying to start over, how it can feel more like running than rebuilding. That's what moving to Brookdale felt like, running in place. 4 months before I met the woman who called herself Kara, I'd walked out of my job and apartment in Milwaukee with a half-burned-out candle and 3 boxes of possessions I didn't even like anymore. The exhaustion wasn't just from work, it was from performing, every day, pretending I was fine when I wasn't even close. Brookdale was small, quiet, a town where the streetlights blinked sleepily after 9 p.m., and people waved more out of habit than interest. I rented a modest 1-bedroom above an old florist's shop. The walls were thin, and the pipes complained, but it was mine. I worked from home now, doing freelance design and marketing, which meant I went days without speaking to anyone in person. Most evenings I walked to Fairway Market just to feel the rhythm of other people's footsteps. The familiarity of shelves and labels steadied me. That's where I met her. She slipped into the frame of my life like she belonged there, right between the basil pesto and the sun-dried tomato. She leaned close, smiling in that easy, unthreatening way, and said, "Go for the basil. The other one tastes like regret." I laughed, not politely, but genuinely. Something in her delivery made me feel like we were already on the same page. I don't even remember what I said back, something stupid, I'm sure. But we left the store chatting like old friends. She said her name was Kara, recently divorced, moved from Chicago to get away from it all. Her tone was dry but warm, like she'd learned to be funny to survive something. She said the loneliness surprised her. That made me nod too quickly. We exchanged numbers under the sleepy glow of the parking lot lights. After that, she was just around. Texts, coffees, walks through the park. I was cautious, but not enough. I was lonely, but not desperate. At least that's what I told myself. Kara never asked too many questions, which made it easy to relax around her. She didn't push. She made a joke about my chipped mug once, and I laughed too hard. Looking back, I think she was studying me, learning the edges of me. But at the time, I just thought, finally, someone who gets it. The text came late, 11:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in bed reading when my phone buzzed. "Can I come over? Something happened. I think my ex followed me again. I don't want to be alone tonight." I didn't even hesitate. My thumb was already typing back. "Of course, I'll buzz you in." She showed up 10 minutes later, soaked from the drizzle, jacket zipped to her chin, eyes wide and nervous. I offered tea. She asked for peppermint. I set up the couch with a blanket, dimmed the lights, and tried to keep things light. But she kept glancing at the window like she expected a knock at any second. I asked her if she wanted to call someone. She shook her head. "He wouldn't do anything. Just likes making me feel watched," she said. Gaslighting, right? He was good at that. I said I'd lock everything. I offered her my charger, asked if she needed anything. She told me I was too kind. I said it wasn't kindness, just being human. That night I left her the spare key. I didn't say it out loud, but the implication was clear. If she needed a place again, she had it. I left early the next morning for a doctor's appointment. She was still sleeping, or pretending to. I scribbled a note, left it on the counter next to the tea mug, and stepped into the day thinking, naively, that I'd done something good. But when I returned, just after noon, the door was cracked open. Not busted, just ajar. Inside, it was like someone had taken a blender to my apartment. Couch cushions shredded, drawers pulled out, my laptop gone. The small emergency cash I kept in the spice cabinet vanished. So was Kara. It's a particular kind of betrayal that makes you question your own memory. At first I thought maybe there'd been some emergency. Maybe she'd panicked. Maybe she'd come back. But the truth was obvious. She had played me. I called the police. They came quickly. A tall, tired officer took down my statement while glancing at my half-wrecked living room. I told them there was no sign of forced entry, that I'd let her in, that I'd given her the key. That part made him pause. "So, you invited her to stay voluntarily?" he asked. I nodded, hating myself. "And how long had you known her?" 3 weeks. I could tell he wanted to say something, but he didn't. Just nodded and kept writing. They ran the name I gave them. Nothing. No records, no license, no address. The phone number disconnected within the hour. She had disappeared. I was humiliated, not just for trusting a stranger, but for needing to, for craving connection enough to let someone in without guardrails. 2 weeks later, I saw her again. Not in person, on the local news site. A blurry surveillance photo from a gas station in the next county over. She was buying snacks with a stolen card. Same jacket, same smirk. The caption called her a suspect, known to befriend women under false identities before robbing them. A pattern, a predator, and I'd been a mark. I printed out the article and taped it behind my pantry door, not as a shrine, as a reminder. To pay attention next time. That smile wasn't safety, it was strategy, and all the things I'd taken as friendship were part of a script. I started seeing her everywhere, not actually her, just echoes, in strangers' voices, in someone's posture at the library. At first I thought I was being paranoid, but then I realized this was how she worked. She didn't need a disguise, just a new name and a borrowed past. Some days I imagined confronting her, just walking up to her in some store and saying, "I know what you did." But the truth was I didn't, not all of it, and that's what haunted me the most. Because if someone can build a story so convincing that you let them into your home, what else are they capable of? Life resumed, as it always does. I changed the locks. I moved apartments a month later. I started waving back at neighbors, not out of friendliness, but awareness. I learned how to look for inconsistencies. I became that person who double checks who's at the door. But the lesson wasn't just about locks and caution. It was about why I'd opened that door in the first place. I wasn't stupid. I was lonely. Loneliness doesn't come with flashing lights or warnings. It's quiet. It dresses itself up in laughter and small talk and people who seem to see you. That's what makes it dangerous. Now I carry that lesson with me, not as fear, as clarity. I don't need to be suspicious of everyone, just patient. Trust shouldn't be fast. It should be earned. Slowly, imperfectly, honestly. Because the people who want to fool you, they've practiced every line, and the ones who mean well, they don't mind taking the time. Kindness is a gift, not a guarantee. Offer it wisely. Trust should be earned, not given as an antidote to loneliness. Some people wear friendship like a costume, learn to look behind the mask. It's strange how silence can feel heavier than noise. After my roommates left Jackson to start their shiny new careers, one in Austin, the other in Raleigh, I stayed behind in Unit 14B, tucked into the corner of Magnolia Creek townhomes like a leftover thought. The house felt bigger without them, though it wasn't. Just 2 bedrooms, thin walls, the same half-stained carpets, and a kitchen that never quite lost the smell of burnt popcorn from last fall. For the first few weeks, I liked the quiet. It gave me space to breathe, to work. I'm a freelance video editor. Weddings, small business ads, boring training seminars. I do it all from home, mostly at night, because that's when my brain finally shuts out the world and lets me focus. I'd keep the blinds open while I worked, letting the faint orange light from the parking lot spill across my desk. It was ambient, gentle, made me feel less alone. After they moved out, I didn't change much. I kept their rooms untouched for a while, like they might come back. Eventually, I boxed their stuff, vacuumed the dust lines under their beds, and told myself it was fine. I had my rhythm. Coffee at 9, emails by 10, editing from lunch until late. Most nights I wouldn't sleep until 3 a.m., but on April 21st, I decided to break that pattern. No reason why, really. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I needed the break. I went to bed around 10:20 p.m., tossed my phone on the nightstand, and didn't bother locking the deadbolt. I never did at night. Not out of negligence, just habit. I'd lock it in the morning when I went out for groceries or walks. That night, though, it would have mattered. I woke up at 1:58 a.m. I know the exact time because my phone screen lit up when I reached for it, thinking maybe a notification had chimed, but there was no sound. What woke me wasn't my phone. It was the soft click of my front door opening. At first, I didn't move. My brain tried to explain it away. Wind, maybe. A faulty latch. A breeze through a cracked window. But when I sat up, holding my breath, I heard it again. A low groan, like the weight of someone settling into a cushion. I got out of bed slowly. My room is upstairs, right above the living room. There's a narrow stairwell with old wood steps that creak even under your own weight. I tiptoed to the top step and froze. There was a man sitting on my couch. The TV was on, muted. Staticky visuals from a YouTube ad were frozen on the screen. He had his feet up like he lived there. He looked average. Gray, unkempt hair, heavyset, wearing a sagging hoodie over too many layers. His face had this slack calm, the kind of look you'd see on someone watching the weather. Not a criminal, not agitated, just present. "What the hell?" I said out loud, too stunned to keep it in. He turned slowly. His eyes met mine without surprise. "Didn't mean to wake you," he said. His voice was rough, almost kind. "You left the door open." My stomach sank. I backed away, grabbed my phone off the nightstand, and bolted down the hallway to the back door. I didn't stop to grab shoes. I didn't even close the door behind me. I just ran, barefoot, across the lawn to my neighbor's unit. They didn't answer at first. I banged until their porch light flicked on and I saw a man's face through the blinds. He opened the door cautiously, probably thinking I was drunk or high or both. "There's someone in my house," I said, breathless. "There's a man on my couch. I don't know who he is." They called the police for me. Cops were there in under 5 minutes. When they went inside, the man was gone. The officers swept the place top to bottom. They found no signs of forced entry. The front door was still cracked open the way I'd left it. They checked the windows, the locks, even the attic just to be thorough. Nothing. "He probably left when he heard you yelling," one of them said, scribbling into his notebook. "Might have been looking for a place to sleep. Happens sometimes. We'll file it as a likely homeless intrusion." "But nothing was taken," I said. "Yeah, well, doesn't mean he wasn't dangerous. You should keep your doors locked, especially at night. It's a good neighborhood, but that's just common sense." They were right. I should have locked the door. But what bothered me wasn't just that someone had gotten in. It was how comfortable he looked, like he'd been there before. They asked me for a description. I gave them everything I could. Around 50, gray hair, baggy clothes, maybe 5'9", heavy set. Calm. No weapon, no yelling. Just there. They told me to call again if anything else happened. The next day I couldn't focus on work. I kept checking the locks, staring out the blinds, jumping every time a car door slammed in the parking lot. I told myself it was over. A one-off. Wrong place, wrong time. But there was this pressure in my chest like something hadn't been resolved. That night, I went to make coffee. Something to help me push through a late editing job. And I stopped mid-reach. There was a full mug of coffee already sitting on the counter. Still steaming. My mug. The one I always used. Navy blue with a chipped rim. I hadn't made it. I hadn't even gone into the kitchen that morning. Next to it was the creamer bottle still out. Vanilla almond. A splash in the mug, just how I take it. Not too much. I stood there, frozen. That man, he hadn't just come in and sat down. He'd made himself at home. I checked my phone. There were no notifications, no alerts. But something made me open the YouTube app anyway. The last played video was a vlog I'd filmed 2 years ago. A dumb apartment tour I'd shot with my roommates. We never made it public. It was a private upload, meant for laughs. One view. I didn't sleep that night. After that, I started changing everything. I kept the deadbolt locked at all times. I unplugged the smart TV and covered the webcam on my laptop. I started sleeping with a heavy flashlight by the bed. I even moved a dresser in front of the back door. I didn't care how paranoid it looked. I called the cops again and told them about the coffee, the video. They told me they'd file an addendum to the report, but unless I had evidence of another break-in, there wasn't much they could do. So I bought a small indoor camera, just one, cheap, Wi-Fi enabled. I hid it in the bookshelf across from the living room. I figured if he came back, I'd know. But nothing happened for days. A week passed, then another. I started to think I'd imagined some of it. Sleep deprivation, false memory. Maybe I'd made the coffee and forgotten. Maybe I clicked on that old video out of boredom. But deep down, I knew better. Then came May 3rd. I got home from a walk around 9:30 p.m. The place was dark, quiet, normal. I made dinner, knocked out a few edits, and went to bed before midnight. In the morning, I checked the camera out of habit. At 2:12 a.m., it recorded motion. The footage showed the living room, dimly lit by the hallway nightlight, the couch, the TV. Nothing out of place. Until he walked in from the stairwell. He'd been upstairs. He didn't look at the camera. He didn't look at anything, really. Just moved to the couch, sat down, and stared at the blank TV. No sound, no movement, just stillness. He stayed there for 27 minutes. Then he stood up, walked into the kitchen, and out of frame. He never left through the front door. I moved out 2 days later. I didn't care about breaking the lease. I didn't even bother packing properly. Just stuffed my car full of clothes, hard drives, anything I couldn't replace. The rest I left behind. The landlord seemed annoyed at first, but when I showed him the footage, he went pale. Said he'd have someone check the place out, never followed up. I crashed on my cousin's couch for a few weeks before finding a sublet across town. Smaller place, 1 floor, newer locks. I didn't tell many people what happened. Not because I didn't want to, but because most wouldn't believe it. A man walking around my home like it was his, not stealing, not speaking, just watching, existing, quietly. The final straw came not from the footage, or the cops, or the mug of coffee. It came from an email, an anonymous message sent to the email address tied to my private YouTube account. Hope you're sleeping better now. It's hard getting used to new places. I miss the quiet. No name, no reply address, just those words. I haven't seen him since. I don't know his name, or how he knew me, or how long he'd been watching before he finally let me see him. Sometimes I wonder if it started long before my roommates left. If they ever saw him. If he ever stood at the edge of the hall, waiting for me to go to bed. I still work from home, but I moved out of Jackson. I don't leave my blinds open anymore. I don't post online. And I never ever leave the door unlocked. Not for a minute. I try not to think about the questions that still have no answers. How did he know my coffee routine? How did he get upstairs without a sound? Where did he go when he disappeared? But the one that haunts me most, the one I still don't have the nerve to say out loud, was he ever really gone? Not all intrusions are loud. Some come quietly, through the cracks you ignore. Trust your instincts. Lock your doors. And never assume you're alone, just because it feels like you are. Long before I ever saw his face, I felt him. I moved into my place at Willow Ridge Heights on March 26, 2022, Lot 12B, just a mile outside Elk Falls, Missouri. It wasn't much. Peeling yellow siding, a cranky furnace, and the constant drip of a leaky faucet in the kitchen. But after the last 2 years of couch surfing and heartbreak, it was mine. All mine. That first morning, I drank my coffee standing barefoot on the back deck, watching the dew burn off the lawn. I felt free. Finally. Independent. 26, and starting fresh. That kind of morning should have felt clean, hopeful. But it didn't, because across the small chain-link fence at Lot 12A, a man was watching me, just standing there behind his screen door. He didn't move, didn't wave, just stared. I remember trying to smile, trying to be neighborly. All I got in return was a blank face. No blink, no nod, just Victor Matthews, as I'd later learn, doing what he did best, watching. He gave me the creeps right away, but I told myself not to judge. People grieve in their own way. Maybe he was lonely. Maybe he didn't mean anything by it. The world teaches women to second-guess their instincts, and I'd done that my whole life. But even back then, I knew. Something was off. My job had me working nights, 9 to 6, at an emergency vet clinic about 20 minutes away. That first week, every time I walked out to my car, Victor's porch light clicked on. Every time. I never saw him flip a switch or step out. just that old bulb humming above his door and the curtain twitching. I joked about it at work, called him Window Walter, but it stopped being funny after a while. The first real scare came 10 days after I moved in. I got home around 6:30 a.m., sky still dark and heavy with early spring fog. I was unlocking my back door when I noticed the scratches, 3 long straight gouges right across the wood. Fresh, deep, deliberate, like someone had dragged a blade across it slowly, just to see what would give. I told the landlord. He waved it off. "Raccoons," he said, "but raccoons don't line up 3 claw marks with surgical precision, and they don't stand outside your window for 6 minutes in the middle of the night." I found that out 3 days later, when I reviewed the security cam I'd installed after my trash got dumped out twice and someone turned my garden hose on full blast at 3 in the morning. The footage made my blood run cold. It showed Victor walking into my backyard at exactly 2:06 a.m. He stood behind my kitchen window, didn't knock, didn't move, just watched for 6 minutes. Not a muscle moved, just his breath fogging the glass. I showed the cops. They went over. He told them he'd been chasing a raccoon and got turned around. They gave him a warning and moved on. A warning. I stopped sleeping after that. I ate standing up, started showering in the afternoons before work, stopped using the backyard entirely, because it wasn't just fear anymore. It was violation. It was knowing someone had been there and seen you and that no one could or would stop him. But I hadn't seen anything yet. It started with a sound. That's always how it begins, right? It was the night of April 3rd. I remember the date because I just finished a brutal 12-hour shift where a lab mix bled out in front of me. I was fried, came home, peeled off my scrubs, collapsed on the couch, didn't even eat, just closed my eyes. At 2:11 a.m., I woke up. I didn't hear a bang. It wasn't someone shouting or glass breaking. It was a knock, a soft, hollow knock, rhythmic, repetitive, like someone tapping a spoon on a glass bottle. It came from the front door. I froze. Every instinct screamed, "Don't move." The knock continued. Tap, tap, tap every few seconds. Measured. Calm. I reached for my phone and crawled off the couch, low, like in some bad movie. When I finally made it to the peephole, my heart already felt like it would stop. Victor was standing there. He was so close I couldn't even see his full face, just the curve of his pale cheek and one eye, milky and bloodshot, filling the lens. He didn't blink, didn't speak, just stared. I backed away and called 911, whispered everything I could. By the time the officers got there, he was back inside his house. They knocked. He came out calm as ever, wearing a robe like he'd just been sleeping. Claimed he hadn't left the house. No prints, no camera evidence from the front. They said he might have been confused. Told me to keep documenting everything. Suggested I move if I felt unsafe. Move. Just like that. I didn't sleep that night. Or the night after. 2 days later, he was gone. A truck showed up in the morning. By the afternoon, lot 12A was empty. He didn't say goodbye. He left behind some old garden tools, a chair, and a locked red toolbox in the shed. The landlord said no one could touch it. It was private property. Whatever was in that box stayed there. But Victor, he didn't. In the days after he left, I tried to breathe again, told myself it was over. But fear doesn't leave with the person who caused it. It lingers. I kept the bat by my bed, started locking the bathroom window even during daylight. I'd catch myself listening at night for sounds that weren't there, scratching, tapping, breathing. Every once in a while, the porch light would flicker on. I convinced myself it was squirrels, maybe a sensor glitch, but deep down, I knew. Victor might have left, but something stayed. I don't mean in the ghost story kind of way. I don't believe in ghosts, but habits, instincts, they stick around. I'd pause at windows before opening blinds. I'd check under the car before getting in. I never stepped outside after 11 p.m., not even for the mail. One evening in June, while watering the dying marigolds on the porch, I saw a new family moving into Lot 12A. A young couple, kid in tow. The boy waved at me. I waved back. Their moving truck blocked my view of the house for most of the day. But as the sun dipped behind the houses and long shadows stretched across the yards, I noticed something strange. The shed door in Victor's backyard was open, and the red toolbox was gone. I didn't ask about the shed, didn't tell the new tenants. What would I say? Hey, your place used to be watched by a night stalker who stared through my window like a TV screen. I left it alone. Weeks passed. Summer came and went. The marigolds bloomed again, brighter than before. I still worked nights, but now with a rotation that gave me Sundays off. Life started to feel normal again, until the knocking came back. Not every night, not even every week. But sometimes, especially when it was windy, I'd hear it again. That soft, glassy knock. Always at 2:11 a.m. I stopped opening the door. I stopped checking the peephole. Because maybe it wasn't him, but maybe it was. And knowing is sometimes worse than not. It's been over 2 years. I'm still in the same house, Lot 12B, still working the same job, still carrying the weight of that spring like a scar under the skin, and I still don't know if Victor ever truly left, or if someone else just took his place. But I've learned something that matters more than proof or closure. Trust your gut. I knew from day one that something wasn't right, but I brushed it off because being polite felt safer than being right. Because society teaches women that accusing someone, especially an old man with a limp and a quiet voice, makes us the problem. Victor Matthews never hurt me physically. But fear like that is a kind of injury too. A kind of trauma that doesn't bruise but still bleeds. These days, when a neighbor stares too long or a door creaks in the night, I listen. And I keep the bat by the bed. Long before the sun started greeting my windows, long before Ridgeway Park became a blur of fallen leaves and worn trail markers, there was a tightness in my chest I couldn't shake. It started shortly after I was promoted to office manager. On paper, it looked like a win. Better pay, corner desk, a title that finally sounded like I'd made it. But what people don't talk about is how sometimes climbing the ladder only gets you closer to the edge. I couldn't sleep. I'd wake around 3 a.m., heart thudding like I'd missed an alarm. Cold sweat, dry mouth. My doctor called it adjustment anxiety, apparently not uncommon for people in new leadership roles. He handed me a small prescription and suggested I find something to ground me. I didn't want pills, I wanted peace. That's how I found myself jogging in the early hours, when Glendale was still dark and Ridgeway Park was mine alone. I didn't like gyms. Too artificial, too loud. Ridgeway was real. There was something almost sacred about the quiet crunch of gravel beneath my sneakers, the ghost-pale lamplight catching dew on the grass. I stuck to Loop 3B, a safe, well-worn path with soft lighting, occasional benches and a few friendly dog walkers who nodded as they passed. It became a ritual. Same playlist, same trail, same half-mile mark where I'd pause to stretch under that crooked birch tree. It was steady, predictable. Mine. Until Jenna showed up. It was a Tuesday, early October. I was mid-loop, breathing hard, earbuds in, when I noticed her waving. She wore running tights and a long-sleeved zip-up, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. I pulled out one bud. "Hey," she said breathlessly. "I keep seeing you out here. Figured I'd finally say hi." I nodded, catching my breath. "You run often?" "Trying to," she said with a laugh. "Just got dumped. Figured it was time to get my life back." She smiled, the kind that invited trust. We jogged the next loop together, talking about nothing important. Music, crappy coffee, the weird comfort of a dark park. It was easy. She was easy. Not in that way. I mean, she made the silence feel less heavy. Over the next week, Jenna became part of my routine. She'd show up a few minutes after I started. Sometimes we'd stretch together. Other times we'd just nod and run side by side in that shared silence only early risers know. Then, one Friday, she said, "Hey, tomorrow, Let's run the back trail. You know, behind the maintenance gate. No one's ever on it. You'll love it." I paused. "Back trail? Isn't that the one that's all trees and no lights?" "Yeah, but that's the fun part," she said. "Peaceful, private. I've done it a dozen times." I didn't say no. Didn't say yes either. Just gave a non-committal shrug and a vague, maybe. She grinned and jogged ahead. That was the last time I saw her face. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about the way she'd said, "Trust me," kept circling in my head. It wasn't what she said. It was how rehearsed it sounded. The next morning, I pulled into Ridgway's lot at 4:20 a.m. Only one car was parked, an old, dented blue sedan, not Jenna's usual. I stayed in my car, key half turned in the ignition, just watching. At 4:36, a shape appeared near the tree line. Not running, not stretching, just standing. Still. Watching. My phone buzzed. "Jenna." "Hey, already running. Just take the back trail. I'll catch up ahead." But I hadn't texted her. Hadn't even stepped outside. That was the moment my gut turned to stone. I stared at the message. My thumbs hovered over the screen. Should I reply? Ask where exactly she was? Instead, I slid the phone face down on the passenger seat and turned the engine back on. I didn't slam the gas. I didn't peel out. I just slowly circled the lot, pretending I was lost or maybe deciding not to run after all. As I looped around toward the rear exit of Ridgway Park, the one that led out near the old maintenance access, I caught a glimpse of movement. A man was stepping out of the woods, long strides, confident. Not in a rush. He pulled something off his head. A wig. He shook it out and climbed into the blue sedan. That's when I knew. Jenna was never real. He had watched me. He had studied me. And when I saw that car pull out and head in the opposite direction, I finally exhaled. And then I started shaking. The rest of the drive home was a blur. I kept checking my mirrors. I drove past my own apartment twice just to be sure I wasn't being followed. When I finally pulled in, the silence of my parking garage felt suffocating. I locked the door behind me and called the non-emergency police line. The dispatcher asked for details. I told her everything. The name, the car, the texts, the location. "He wore a disguise?" she asked. "Yes, a woman's running gear. Wig, maybe makeup, I don't know." "And you met this person regularly?" "Every morning for a week." There was a long pause. She told me an officer would follow up, said they'd check the area, but Ridgway's security cameras had been down for months. I knew that. Everyone who ran there knew that. When the officer came by later that day, he took notes, asked the usual questions. I handed him my phone. He scrolled through the messages from Jenna. "That's a burner number," he said. "Prepaid, no registration, no name, no fingerprint, no trace. He might as well have been a ghost." I started shaking again. I didn't go back to Ridgway. I canceled my running apps, switched to a gym 30 minutes away under a different name, paid in cash for the first few months. I didn't run alone. I didn't jog at night. I didn't jog before dawn. Ever. But I also didn't tell anyone. Not really. What would I say? My coworkers already thought I was wound a little tight since the promotion. I could hear it in the way they asked, "You doing okay?" With eyebrows slightly raised. No one wants to hear how close you came to being a headline. So I told no one. But I watched everything. Every morning I parked somewhere different. I changed my routes. I scanned for taillights behind me, memorized license plates. I stopped using Bluetooth headphones. I wanted to hear everything. I became a version of myself I didn't recognize. Hyper-aware, suspicious, calculating. And then, one evening, about 2 weeks later, I got another text. No number. Just a blank contact. "You were smart. Most aren't." I stood in my kitchen, knees weak. The message disappeared before I could screenshot it. I opened the thread. Nothing. Like it was never there. I went to the police again, showed them the blank screen. They told me to keep my phone on, turn on location sharing, call immediately if anything happened. But nothing ever happened again. No one came to my window. No one followed me. Whoever he was done. Or he found someone else. 3 months later, I moved. I left Glendale for a smaller city 2 hours north. I told people it was for a better job. It was easier than saying I didn't feel safe anymore. The truth was, I couldn't look at parks the same way. I couldn't jog without remembering that message. That moment of realizing I had been baited, that someone had put on a woman's name, a woman's voice, a personality, just to get me into a blind spot. In the new city, I joined a women's running club. Safety in numbers. We met at daylight hours. Real names. Real people. I still think about Jenna. I wonder how long he watched before he spoke. I wonder how he decided what to say, how to smile, what kind of voice to use. He didn't just stalk me. He built someone I would trust. And that's the part that never stops bothering me. It took a long time for the anxiety to ease. Not just the nightmares, those faded eventually. It was the daily vigilance, the distrust, the way I'd flinch when a friendly stranger struck up a conversation in line at the grocery store. That part still lingers. But slowly, I learned how to live again. Carefully, with more boundaries, with sharper instincts. And I kept jogging. Not because I forgot what happened, but because I refused to let him take it from me. I've learned that fear doesn't always shout. Sometimes it wears a ponytail and asks about your favorite songs. Sometimes it laughs with you in the early hours, says, "Trust me," with a smile. And the people who survive are the ones who listen to that whisper in their gut. The one that says something's off. That whisper saved my life. Not everyone who smiles at you is safe. Sometimes the most dangerous people wear the most ordinary masks. Always trust your instincts, even when there's no evidence, even when it feels rude. A gut feeling is reason enough. I never planned to come back to Whitetail Ridge. It wasn't just the cold or the isolation, though God knows this part of Colorado can feel like the end of the earth. It was the memories. I left after my divorce, after losing my job at the high school, after deciding I needed a clean break. That break never came. Life has a funny way of circling back on you, especially when your mother's health begins to fail and you're the only one left to look after her. So, 4 weeks before the first storm hit, I packed up what was left of my life and moved into her old cabin. It sat at the edge of Cabin Road E, a crooked finger of cracked pavement and frostbitten mailboxes at the foot of Blue Spruce Valley. The place smelled like cedar, old wool, and Vicks VapoRub. She was in and out of lucidity most days, but she remembered me, at least enough to smile when I brought her tea. The locals hadn't changed much. Still the same slow-talking cashiers at Bell's General, same stories passed around like hot cider. But one conversation I overheard during a grocery run stuck with me. "Still no word from that vlogger?" one man asked, rubbing his hands near the heater. "Daniel something?" "Price, yeah. His car was found near the Spruce Trailhead," the other replied. "GPS put him 5 miles in, then nothing. Poor fool probably wandered too far." I didn't say anything, just quietly noted that Spruce Trail was less than a 10-minute walk from our cabin. And Daniel Price, I remembered him vaguely. Nature guy, had a YouTube channel, did these dramatic monologues about survival and solitude. Irony's cruel. That same night, a snowstorm rolled in earlier than expected. The wind howled like a living thing, and flakes slapped against the windows hard enough to rattle the panes. I was locking up the woodshed when I saw it. Movement across the yard. At first I thought it was a trick of the snow, but then I saw it clearly. A lantern. Its light swayed behind my neighbor's shed. Raymond Huxley lived across from me, 60-something, thick beard, flannel shirts year-round, kept to himself. The kind of man you'd describe as private, which is really just code for someone you don't ask questions about. But that lantern, it didn't move like a man walking. It jerked, paused, dropped low like it was being dragged through the snow. Something about it felt wrong. I stood there for a long moment before retreating back inside, watching from behind the curtain. An hour later, red and blue lights reflected off the snow outside my window. A sheriff's cruiser parked across from Huxley's. They were asking questions. The missing hiker, I figured. I never saw them go inside. The next morning, I asked Deputy Callahan about it when I spotted him at Bell's. He remembered me from school field trips. "Just routine," he said. "Somebody called in a tan SUV parked near Huxley's trail the night the hiker went missing." I raised an eyebrow. "Tan SUV. That's what Price drove, isn't it?" He nodded slowly. "Huxley said he heard an engine that night. Didn't see anything. Not enough to go on." That was the moment something started itching in the back of my mind. The kind of itch you can't reach and shouldn't ignore. The snow didn't let up for days. Our road became a chalk smear of tire grooves and half-buried fences. Power flickered twice, then cut out entirely on Thursday night. I sat wrapped in 2 blankets, flashlight balanced on the coffee table, listening to the creaks of the cabin expand in the cold. At 12:17 a.m., I heard it. A metallic grinding, slow, rhythmic. It sounded like metal dragging across wood. I moved toward the back window. Frost clung to the glass like skin, and I had to rub a circle clear with my sleeve. Outside, everything was blanketed in white, but one thing stood out. Raymond Huxley's shed. It was open. For the first time since I moved in, the wide double doors stood ajar, and just beyond them a figure in the snow. A shadow digging. Not quickly, not with any sense of urgency, just slow and deliberate, methodical. I couldn't see a shovel, but I could see the movement, the lean, the lift, the drop, like he was burying something, or unburying it. I stood there frozen in more ways than one. Eventually the light from the shed went out. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I debated calling it in. But what would I say? "Hey, my neighbor was out in the snow last night and might have been digging." Not exactly cause for search and seizure. But something had shifted in me. A weight, a tension I couldn't explain. So later that afternoon, once my mother was napping and the wind had died down, I bundled up and took a walk behind the cabins. There's an old utility trail that winds between trees and frozen creeks. I told myself I was just getting fresh air, but a half-mile in, I found them. Boot prints, big ones, deep in the snow, veering off the trail into brush. I followed them, heart pounding, until I found it. A mossy stone pit, half covered in twigs and old leaves. Inside it was a tarp, blue, dirty, folded. I didn't touch it. I turned and hiked home faster than I'd moved in years. By the time I returned with Callahan and a second deputy, the tarp was gone. So were the prints. Fresh snow had started falling again. They searched for 10 minutes, found nothing. "Could be animal tracks," Callahan said, though he didn't sound convinced. I looked toward Huxley's shed across the ridge. He wasn't outside, but the doors were closed again, locked. After that, everything felt different. The quiet wasn't peaceful anymore. It was too quiet, like the world had taken a breath and held it. Huxley didn't come to town much. When he did, he spoke to no one. Bells had a running joke that he hadn't said more than 10 words since 2009. But I started watching, from my window, from the trail, from behind the tree line. The digging never repeated, at least not that I saw, but I noticed other things. A faint smell sometimes when the wind blew the right direction. Not strong, not immediate, just a sour edge to the cold. I checked my own pipes, my garbage. Nothing. 2 weeks after the tarp incident, I saw Huxley carrying something long and wrapped from his house to the shed. Could have been firewood, could have been a tarp. I couldn't tell. But the way he looked over his shoulder 3 times made my blood run cold. Then, just like that, he was gone. Mid-January, after a heavy snow, I walked to Bell's and saw the flyer on the door, for rent scrawled in block letters over a photo of Huxley's cabin. No announcement, no moving truck. He'd packed up and left. The sheriff's office didn't say much, but rumors trickled in. He told the landlord he was leaving state, left no forwarding address. The shed remained. It stayed locked through spring. By March, the snow began to melt. My mother had improved enough to stay alone for a few hours, so I started walking again, mostly to clear my head. I stayed away from the ridge. Until one morning, I found something. Behind my own fence, half buried in the melting snow, a hiking boot, muddy, faded red, laces frayed, same brand Daniel Price wore in his last video. I recognized the tread pattern from his gear breakdown episode. I didn't touch it, just stared and backed away slowly. They never found Daniel Price. There were search parties, of course, dogs, drones, hundreds of volunteers. But the terrain up here is cruel. If the woods want to keep a secret, they do. After the boot, I called Callahan again. He brought another deputy. They took photos, logged it. But again, no body, no DNA, no evidence, just a boot near a fence. Not enough. I knew they believed me, but belief isn't proof. Whitetail Ridge returned to its quiet. Cabins filled with tourists in the summer, trails reopened. Life went on. But I knew what I saw, and I know what I felt. There's a difference between solitude and silence, between being alone and being watched. I still walk the trails sometimes, but only when the sun's out, and never near the shed. Sometimes the scariest truths aren't the ones shouted. They're the ones hidden in plain sight, buried just deep enough to doubt yourself. Always trust your instincts, and when something feels wrong, don't wait for evidence. Listen, watch, and walk away. You don't have to prove danger to survive it. I never minded being alone at night. It wasn't like in the movies where the kid sits clutching a flashlight, jumping at creaks and shadows. By 15, I'd spent enough Saturday nights in that house by myself that it felt normal, comfortable even. Mom worked overnights at St. Martin's Hospital, 12-hour shifts, Friday through Sunday. I'd learned how to heat up frozen burritos without nuking the plate, how to keep myself entertained, and most importantly, how to pretend I wasn't scared even when I was. That Saturday night started like any other. Dinner at 8:30, homework finished by 10, a little YouTube until my eyes started to burn. Around midnight, I paused the video I was watching, got up to grab a soda, and wandered down the hall in my socks. The heat kicked on as I opened the fridge, humming like an old man clearing his throat. I cracked the can open and leaned against the counter, still half watching the silent TV in the other room. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not downstairs. Upstairs. It was subtle, like someone shifting their weight on the floorboards. My first instinct wasn't even fear, just confusion. I called out without thinking. "Mom?" No answer. I frowned and stepped out of the kitchen, craning my neck toward the staircase. The hallway upstairs was dark, just a dim glow from the nightlight I kept plugged in at the top of the stairs. Except, no, that wasn't a nightlight. The hallway light was on, and I always turned it off before coming downstairs. Always. The air shifted. I remember that part clearly, like the entire house suddenly remembered how quiet it was. I slowly walked toward the bottom of the stairs, heart starting to pick up now, soda can still in my hand. I didn't go up all the way, just far enough to peek over the railing through the banister. That's when I saw him. A man, sitting at our dining table. He wore a plain white mask, completely featureless except for eye holes. He was dressed in dark clothes, bulky like layers had been stacked under a jacket, and he was perfectly still, not moving, not twitching, not breathing, as far as I could tell. Just sitting, facing the stairs, facing me. I didn't scream. I didn't move. My body just turned to ice, rooted in place. He didn't flinch. I backed away. My knees gave out a little as I ran, nearly slipping on the carpet as I slammed my bedroom door shut. I locked it, pushed my desk against it with shaking arms, dialed 911 so fast I messed up the number the first time. The dispatcher's voice was calm, almost too calm. I was whispering, crying, trying not to hyperventilate as I told her there was a man in my house, in a mask, sitting at my table. She asked if I was safe, if I had any weapons. I told her no. Just a desk. Just a locked door. Then I heard it. Footsteps again, this time right outside my room. They stopped. Then the doorknob jiggled. Once, twice, deliberate. Like whoever was on the other side wasn't trying to break in. They were just checking. The police came fast, under 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. I didn't open my door until I heard a voice shout, "Police!" from downstairs. 2 officers entered with flashlights drawn. When I cracked the door, they told me to stay in my room while they cleared the house. I sat on my bed, knees bouncing, phone still in my hand, even though I wasn't talking to anyone anymore. After about 10 minutes, they came back up. "The house is clear," one of them said. My mouth was dry. He was sitting there. I saw him. He was right there. "Front door was wide open when we arrived," the other said. "But there's no signs of forced entry. Nothing's broken. You said your mom's out for the night?" I nodded. "She's not back until 7. They made a few notes, radioed in a report, and then walked me through the house. I didn't want to, but they said I should see it, so I knew it was safe. The dining table was empty. No man, no mask, no footprints in the melting snow outside. But something else was there. Something I didn't see before. An envelope. It was thick. The paper yellowed slightly, like it had been sitting in someone's jacket for a while. No name on the front. No writing. One of the officers opened it while I watched from the kitchen. Inside was a photograph. My mom, taken at work, through the glass lobby window of St. Martin's Hospital. She was walking past the front desk, smiling, holding a coffee cup. The timestamp on the photo, 3 days ago, a Thursday morning. I couldn't speak. I just stared. That image felt worse than the mask, because it meant this wasn't random. The man wasn't just breaking into a house. He was waiting in it. They stayed until almost 2:30. One officer took the photo, sealed it in a plastic bag, said they'd send someone from investigations in the morning to follow up. I kept thinking they'd say something to make it okay, that this happened sometimes, that I wasn't crazy. But they didn't. And when they left, I was alone again. I called my mom. She didn't answer, so I left a voicemail, tried to keep my voice steady. "Mom, something happened. You need to call me when you're on break." She didn't call until 4 a.m. I barely remember what I said, just that she cried when I told her. She got someone to cover her shift and came home by 5. When she walked in, she hugged me and didn't let go for a long time. We didn't go back to sleep. By noon, detectives came, asked me to go over everything again. What I heard, what I saw. I told them about the mask, the way he sat so still, how the lights were on upstairs when I know they weren't earlier. They nodded, took notes, said they'd review nearby doorbell cams and traffic footage, but I could see it in their faces. They didn't have anything. When they left, one of them said, "We don't think he was here to hurt you, Noah. If he wanted to, he could have." I didn't say what I was thinking. I don't think I was the reason he came. We didn't sleep in the house after that night. Mom booked a motel for the week. Eventually, she took a leave from work, and we started packing. She said she wanted to start over, but I knew it was more than that. The house didn't feel like ours anymore. It felt used. It was the little things, like how the hallway light would flicker sometimes, or how the TV turned on by itself twice that week. Once, when I walked into the living room during the day, I thought I saw someone in the reflection of the screen, but there was no one there. By February 29th, we were gone. Moved into a rented condo 2 towns over. Smaller, but brighter. New locks. Security cameras. Mom sleeps in the room next to mine now. She doesn't work nights anymore. Sometimes I wake up thinking I hear footsteps. Other times I don't sleep at all. Because the truth is I never saw him get in, and I never saw him leave. We still don't know who he was. The case went cold. They ran the photo for fingerprints. Nothing. No matches, no signs of forced entry, no footprints in the snow. It's like he walked in and vanished. Like he was never there at all. But I know better. I can still see him, sitting in that chair, body still, mask facing the stairs, watching me, waiting. I think that's what scares me most, that he wasn't trying to get in, he already was, like he'd been there before. And maybe, in some twisted way, he thought it was his house. Or worse, he thought we belonged to him. Monsters don't always come crashing through windows. Sometimes they sit quietly at your table because they've been watching long enough to know when you're alone. Lock your doors, trust your instincts, and never ignore what feels wrong, even if you can't explain why. I was 14 the year it happened. Starting high school, awkward as hell and about as social as a tree stump. My mom had just moved us to Marigold Pines, a wooded little patch of Vermont about 30 minutes from any real town. We lived in Cabin Row B, one of 6 seasonal rentals that people either forgot about or used to escape the city for a few weeks in summer. Ours was the only one occupied year-round. Mom worked nights at the hospital in town. Double shifts, sometimes triples. I understood it. She was trying to rebuild after Dad left, trying to give me something stable. Truth was, I didn't mind being alone most of the time. The woods behind our place were quiet and endless, and I liked that. I'd walk Hemlock Trail almost every afternoon after school, backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in, letting the noise of the world fall away. That trail was my routine, my comfort zone. Until it wasn't. It was September 8th, 2010. I remember because school had only been back in session for a week, and I was already counting the days till summer. I had just gotten off the bus and thrown my stuff inside the cabin when I decided to go for a walk. The air smelled like pine needles and early autumn, cool, crisp, but still clinging to the last heat of summer. About a half mile into the trail, I saw him, a man, maybe mid-40s, sitting cross-legged beneath a pine just off the path. Not moving, not resting, just sitting like he was part of the woods. His jacket looked old and dirty, sleeves too long for his arms. A trucker cap shadowed most of his face, but he looked up as I passed, and our eyes locked for maybe 2 seconds. Something about that stare hit the brakes on my spine. He didn't blink, didn't nod, just watched me. I didn't stop, didn't speak, just kept walking. Fast. I didn't look back, but I could feel him watching. That feeling like a hand pressed lightly between your shoulder blades. When I got home, I locked the back door. I never locked it before then. But that day, I did. I didn't tell Mom. She'd just gotten home from a double. She needed rest, not more reasons to worry. That night I couldn't sleep, and at 11:47 p.m., I found out why. It was the sound that woke me, leaves crunching outside, not far from the living room window. Soft. Purposeful. Not the kind of movement that comes from animals. This was heavier, measured. I slipped out of bed and padded down the hallway, avoiding the creaky spots in the floor. I peeked out the curtain, and there he was, the man from the woods, standing on our back porch, just standing. One hand hanging by his side, the other holding something that caught the moonlight. I couldn't tell what it was. A piece of metal, maybe a crowbar, maybe worse. He didn't knock, didn't try the door. He just stared through the glass, not searching, watching. I ducked down and crawled backward, heart pounding so hard I thought it might shake the windows. I grabbed the cordless phone and whispered into it, dialing 911 as quietly as I could. The dispatcher's voice was calm, steady, asked my name, my address, told me to stay quiet and stay hidden. I hid in Mom's closet, behind a box of winter coats, phone pressed to my chest. The dispatcher kept talking, repeating my name. telling me help was on the way. I stayed in there for 20 minutes. He stood at the door for 10, just listening. When the sheriff arrived, he was gone. They found boot prints in the dirt outside the porch. The sheriff told me I did the right thing calling. Said it was probably just a drifter. Someone camping illegally. Maybe a little off. Told Mom to call again if anything else happened. The next day, one of the deputies took me back to the trail. I showed him where the man had been sitting. The spot was empty, but in the dirt nearby we found a canvas bag. Folded. Dirty. Stuffed halfway under a bush like it had been hastily shoved there. Inside was a flashlight, a length of rope, a roll of duct tape, and a used razor blade. The deputy didn't say anything for a few seconds, just zipped the bag closed and stood up slow. "We'll look into it," he said. But I could see it in his face. He knew exactly what that bag was for. Mom put in her notice the same day, said she was transferring to a hospital in town and that the apartment complex near the clinic had an opening. We were out of Marigold Pines within 2 weeks. She told me it was for her job, but I knew better. Even now, years later, I think about that man, about how he didn't run, didn't break in, just waited. I've told this story maybe 5 times in my life, and every time someone asked the same question. Do you think he would have hurt you? The answer is yes. I think he would have waited until I forgot to lock the door, until Mom picked up a second night shift, until the perfect storm of alone, unguarded, and tired fell into place. He wasn't just passing through. He had a plan. I don't go into the woods alone anymore, not even in daylight. Even when I'm out hiking with friends, I keep a knife clipped to my belt and my eyes on the tree line. I listen for movement. I double-check locks. I don't assume quiet means safe, because I know now real danger doesn't always scream or chase or throw rocks at your window. Sometimes it sits, cross-legged, beneath a pine tree, waiting. Listen to that chill in your spine. If something feels wrong, trust it. It's not paranoia. It's instinct. Something ancient and built for survival. The world teaches us to doubt ourselves, to rationalize the things that scare us. But fear has a purpose. It's not weakness. It's a warning. And sometimes the difference between safe and missing is one look back, or one locked door. I had lived on Maplewood Drive long enough to recognize the difference between quiet and wrong. Quiet was the way the street settled after dusk. Porch lights humming, sprinklers ticking off, the occasional car door closing. Wrong was the feeling I got that October morning when I saw the moving truck parked in front of the abandoned house across from ours. That house had been empty for almost 6 years. No foreclosure sign, no auction notice. The previous owners, the Larkins, had left in the middle of the night. At least that's what people said. Lights off, cars gone, food still in the fridge when the bank finally sent someone out. After that, the place became a blank spot on the block. No kids dared each other to ring the bell. Even teenagers avoided it. So when the truck showed up, I remember standing at my kitchen window with my coffee cooling in my hand, watching 2 men haul crates up the walkway. Big crates, wood, reinforced corners, no markings. My wife, Dana, came up behind me and said, "Tell me you're seeing that too." "I am," I said. "Guess it's not a ghost house anymore." She didn't laugh. The man who moved in introduced himself exactly once. A few days later, he rang our doorbell just after sunset. When I opened it, he stood perfectly straight, hands clasped in front of him, like he'd practiced the posture. "Evening," he said. "I'm Harold Harlow. Just moved in across the street." He didn't offer a handshake, didn't smile. "Mark Collins," I said. "This is my wife." He nodded to Dana. His eyes flicked briefly past us, into our house, then back to my face. "I work night shifts," he said. "So if you see lights on late, that's normal." "That's fine," Dana said too quickly. He lingered a moment, like he might say more, then simply turned and walked back across the street. That was the last normal thing that happened. Within days, our dog, Max, started acting strange. He'd sit at the front window and growl low in his chest, hair raised, eyes locked on Harlow's house. Not barking, just watching. Dogs sense things, Dana said one night. Dogs also chase squirrels, I replied. But even I didn't believe myself. It was the lack of patterns that bothered me. No car, no trash cans at the curb, no groceries brought inside, but packages kept arriving, big ones, sometimes 2 or 3 at once. They'd sit on his porch during the day and vanish overnight. One afternoon, I was outside raking leaves when Mrs. Turner from down the block leaned over her fence. "You notice the new guy?" she asked. I nodded. "Ever see him leave?" "No." She shook her head. "Lights on all night, off all day, like a bat." That night, just after 11, Dana froze halfway up the stairs. "Do you hear that?" I did. A scraping sound. Metal on concrete. Slow, deliberate. It came from across the street. I stood by the window, careful not to turn on the light. Through the gap in the curtains, I saw his living room lit up. Shadows moved inside. Something large dragged across the floor. "It's probably furniture," I said, but my voice sounded thin. A week later, Dana came inside pale-faced. "He was standing behind the door," she said. "What?" I went to grab a package, looked up and saw him. Through the frosted glass. He wasn't moving, just standing there. "Maybe he didn't realize you were outside." "No," she said. "He knew." By November, other neighbors started talking. Security footage, late-night pacing, standing at the edge of driveways, staring at houses, not randomly, but methodically. Our daughter Emma stopped walking home alone. "He watches me," she said one night at dinner. Dana and I exchanged a look. "From where?" I asked. "The upstairs window," Emma said. "Every day around 5. Maybe he's just..." "He waved," she said. I waited. "And?" He didn't stop. The basketball showed up on our porch 2 days later. It belonged to the Morales kid next door. He'd kicked it over Harlow's fence during a game and bolted like he'd trespassed on a graveyard. That night, around midnight, Max growled. I opened the door. The ball sat dead center on our porch. Clean, dry, wrapped with twine. Dana covered her mouth. "I'm calling the police," she said. They came the next day. Knocked. No answer. Left a card. More calls followed. Welfare checks. Nothing. December came with cold rain and shorter days. Then one afternoon, squad cars blocked the street. Officers went inside Harlow's house. They stayed for hours. When they finally emerged, one of them asked if anyone had a ladder. That night, an officer knocked on our door. "Sir," he said, "we found something you should know." The house was empty. Completely. No furniture, no crates, no signs of life. Except the basement. The walls were covered in sketches, pencil drawings, every house on the block, accurate down to siding cracks and mailbox dents. Certain windows were circled in red, ours included. "He wasn't planning burglary," the officer said quietly. "This was surveillance." "Where is he?" I asked. They didn't know. We moved 6 months later. Emma sleeps with her curtains closed now. So do we. Sometimes when I wake up at night, I swear I hear scraping. But it's just the house settling. I hope. Strange behavior isn't harmless just because it hasn't acted yet. Trust instincts. Speak up early. Patterns matter. Communities protect themselves only when people stop dismissing discomfort as paranoia. Because some dangers don't break in, They watch and wait. I moved into the apartment on East Calder Street in late August, the kind of time when summer hasn't quite loosened its grip, but fall is already waiting its turn. The building sat 8 stories high, concrete and glass, wedged between a laundromat and a half-empty strip mall. It wasn't pretty, but it was cheap, and for a junior drowning in student loans, cheap mattered more than charm. The leasing agent was upfront about the underground garage. "It's safe," she said, smiling a little too quickly. "Cameras everywhere. But yeah, people say it's creepy." I shrugged. I'd grown up in Chicago. Creepy was just another word for quiet. The garage was 3 levels underground, all raw concrete and fluorescent lighting that buzzed like tired insects. The ceiling felt low even though it wasn't. Sound traveled strangely there. Footsteps stretched too long. Car doors slammed twice. My parking spot was near a pillar close to the elevator, which I liked. Less walking, less time alone. The first week passed uneventfully. Classes, late nights at the library, instant noodles for dinner. I learned the building rhythms. Couples arguing through thin walls. Someone practicing violin badly on the 6th floor. The elevator that paused for half a second too long between levels. It was my second week when I came home after midnight from a study session. I remember, because my brain felt fried, formulas still swimming behind my eyes. I pulled into the garage, tires humming against the concrete ramp, and slowed as I approached my spot. That's when I saw her. She stood between 2 parked cars near my space, facing away from me. Long dark hair fell straight down her back, and she wore a blue dress, knee-length, neat, the kind someone might wear to a small ceremony or a formal dinner. It didn't belong in a garage. I rolled down my window. "Hey, excuse me?" She didn't move. I parked a little crooked engine still running and stepped out. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Do you need help?" She shifted then, just slightly. Not a full turn, just her head, angled enough that I could see the curve of her cheek, pale under the flickering light. Her voice was low, calm. "Don't park here tonight." That was it. She walked away toward the far exit door, footsteps echoing softly. No rush, no fear, just certainty. I stood there for a second, then called out, "Wait, what?" No answer. I turned toward the hallway door. It hadn't opened. No beep, no echo. She was just gone. I laughed under my breath, more unsettled than amused. Probably someone from another floor. Probably messing with me. Still, I moved my car. The next morning I forgot about her. That's what I told myself anyway. In reality, the image lingered in the back of my mind while I sat through lectures and scribbled notes. But I pushed it aside. College teaches you to normalize exhaustion. Weird things feel less weird when you're tired. That night, I parked 1 row over from my usual spot, just in case. At 2:14 a.m., sirens tore through my sleep. I stumbled to the window with half-open eyes and saw flashing lights bouncing off the building across the street. People gathered on balconies, murmuring. Smoke curled up from the garage entrance like a dark finger pointing at the sky. By morning, the story was everywhere. A car had exploded in the garage. Fuel leak. The owner had thought it was fixed. 2 nearby cars were destroyed. Concrete walls blackened. Sprinklers triggered. No casualties. The photos online made my stomach turn. The epicenter of the damage was my usual parking spot. People talked in the elevator, in the lobby. Whispers layered with disbelief. Someone said a woman warned him. Security cameras didn't catch anyone. Probably just luck. I told myself the same thing. Luck. Coincidence. Relief wrapped in denial. A week passed, then another. I started staying later on campus, walking slower through the garage, listening to my footsteps. The cameras blinked red reassuringly. Nothing happened, until the night I saw her again. She stood near the elevator entrance this time, hands folded in front of her, posture straight. Same blue dress, same stillness. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. She looked at me fully now. Her eyes were tired, not sad, just focused. "Don't go up yet," she whispered. "What?" I asked. "Why?" But she was already stepping back, fading into the shadows between pillars. I hesitated. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Then the alarm sounded, metal groaned, lights flickered. The doors slammed shut halfway. Somewhere above, people shouted. Maintenance confirmed later that the elevator had jammed between floors. 2 residents trapped for nearly an hour. I stood there staring at the empty space where she'd been. I went to management the next day. The property manager, a woman named Lisa, smiled politely as I explained. Her expression tightened when I mentioned the dress. "We've reviewed the footage," she said carefully. "There's no one there." She turned the screen toward me. Grainy video showed the garage. Me, alone, talking to nothing. "No one else enters the frame," she added, "at any point." I left feeling embarrassed and unsettled in equal measure. The 3rd time I saw her, I didn't question it. She stood beside a pillar, watching a car idle too long. She shook her head once. The driver pulled away moments later. The engine stalled down the ramp, smoke curling from the hood. I started paying attention. Not to her, but to what happened after. Leaks, sparks, loose railings, close calls that never quite crossed the line. I wasn't the only one who noticed things improving. The garage became quieter, safer. One evening, an elderly man stopped me near the mailboxes. "You've seen her," he said gently. I froze. "Who?" "The woman in blue." My throat went dry. "She died here," he continued. "Years ago. Fire. Tried to warn someone about a car leak." "Why me?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "Maybe because you listened." I stopped rushing. When she appeared, I listened. When she didn't, I stayed alert. I learned the difference between fear and caution. Some nights, she just stood there, waiting, watching, like a sentry. I never tried to follow her again. I didn't need answers. Graduation came, then summer. On my last night in the apartment, I parked one final time. She stood by the elevator. She nodded. That was all. I moved out the next morning. But sometimes, when I park in other garages, I pause before stepping out, just in case someone needs time. Warnings don't always come loudly, and protection doesn't always look dramatic. Paying attention, slowing down, and respecting quiet intuition can save lives. Sometimes your own, sometimes someone else's. Not every guardian wears a uniform, and not every danger announces itself. The choice to listen can make all the difference. My name is Olivia Finch. I've lived at 212 Maple Lane for 15 years. It's the kind of quiet, tree-lined street where nothing much happens, which is exactly how I like it. The only blight on the block was the house next door, 214. Old man Hargrove died there a decade ago, and the place fell into a slow, sad decay. It sat empty, windows boarded, lawn a jungle. For years, it was just me and the raccoons. So, when the sold sign went up last spring, I was thrilled. The prospect of neighbors, normal, living neighbors, felt like a blessing. When the moving truck finally arrived, I did what any good neighbor would do. I baked blueberry muffins. The family was young. The father, Mark, had a firm handshake and a smile that didn't quite reach his tired eyes. The mother, Sarah, was painfully thin, her movements quick and bird-like. Their daughter, Lily, was about 7, with serious dark eyes and 2 neat braids. She clung to her mother's leg. "Welcome to the neighborhood," I said, handing over the basket. "Thank you. That's so kind," Sarah said, her voice a whisper. She glanced past me into the shadowy foyer of their own home. As we stepped inside, I felt the chill immediately. The house was nearly empty. A single worn sofa faced a bare wall. A few cardboard boxes were stacked in a corner, and the air smelled of dust and mildew. Every window was shut tight, the locks visibly engaged. I noticed Lily hesitate at the threshold. Mark placed a firm, guiding hand on her back, practically ushering her in. "She's shy," he explained with that tight smile. My eyes were drawn to the door frames. Around the living room arch and the kitchen entrance, deep, ragged scratches gouged the wood. They weren't old. They looked frantic, like something had been trying to claw its way through. "Renovations?" I asked, pointing awkwardly. Mark's smile vanished. "Pests," he said flatly. Previous owner had a big dog. But the scratches were at shoulder height for a tall man. I left soon after, my skin prickling. That night, taking my terrier, Gus, out for his last walk, I glanced up at 214. In the top left window, a window I'd seen locked hours before, a silhouette stood. It was impossibly tall, its head brushing the top of the frame, perfectly motionless. It wasn't Mark. It was someone, or something, else. The next morning, the windows were all locked again. The family settled into a bizarre, silent routine. Mark left for work at the same time, but moved like a man walking through a minefield, constantly glancing over his shoulder. Sarah rarely emerged. When she did, to collect the mail or water a single pathetic potted plant, her eyes were hollow, darting toward the house as if expecting an attack. Lily was a ghost in her own yard. She'd swing on the rusted swing set, but her movements were listless, her eyes always fixed on her back door. I tried to be friendly, waving, offering to have Lily over to play. My offers were met with polite, panicked refusals. "She's not feeling social," Sarah would say, pulling her daughter close. One evening, a week after they moved in, a storm rolled in. The wind howled, and the old bones of 214 groaned. I was reading in my living room when Gus began to growl, low and steady, at the wall we shared with them. Thump. A heavy, singular impact shook the pictures on my wall. Then another. Thump. It was coming from their basement. I froze, my book forgotten. It wasn't the sound of a box falling. It was the sound of something striking solid wood with purpose. It stopped as abruptly as it started. 10 minutes later, through the sheeting rain, I saw Mark hurry out the back door with a large, heavy-looking black bag. He threw it into his car trunk and sped away. He returned an hour later, empty-handed. He stood in the driveway for a long time, just staring at his house in the rain, before squaring his shoulders and going back inside, like a soldier returning to a trench. The incident that changed everything happened on a Tuesday. A crisp, cold autumn night. I was taking out the recycling when I saw a small, pale shape on my porch. It was Lily. She stood barefoot on the cold concrete in thin pajamas, shivering violently. Her face was streaked with tears. "Lily, honey, what's wrong?" I rushed toward her. She flinched but didn't run. Her voice was the faintest whisper, swallowed by the night. "Please don't tell my dad I came here." "Why not? Are you hurt?" She shook her head, her braids swinging. Her eyes were huge with a fear no child should know. "He'll think it followed me." Before I could process her words, the front door of 214 flew open. Mark sprinted across the lawn, his face a mask of pure terror. He didn't yell. He scooped Lily up, holding her so tightly she gasped. "I'm so sorry, Olivia," he babbled, backing away. "She sleepwalks. She shouldn't have bothered you." "Mark, she's freezing. She said something about she has nightmares," he interrupted, his voice cracking. "Just bad dreams. Thank you. Good night." He practically ran back inside, clutching his daughter. The door slammed shut, and I heard the distinct sound of multiple locks engaging. I stood frozen on my porch, Lily's whispered words echoing. "He'll think it followed me." 2 nights later, the sounds began in earnest. I was in bed when the first heavy thud echoed through the wall, then another. It was a footstep, but massive, ponderous, as if something huge and weighty was pacing in their living room. Thud, drag, thud, drag. Gus whined, burrowing under the covers. My heart hammered against my ribs. Then I heard Mark's voice, shrill with desperation. "No! Stay downstairs! You stay in the basement!" A guttural, grating sound answered him. Not words, but a vibration that made my teeth ache. The heavy footsteps descended. I heard the basement door slam. Then silence. For an hour, I debated. This wasn't a marital dispute. This was something else. Finally, fear for that little girl overrode my reluctance to intrude. I called the police. I told them I believed my neighbors were in danger, that I heard violent threats and strange movements. The police arrived 20 minutes later, their cruiser lights painting the quiet street in flashes of blue and red. They knocked on 214's door. No answer. They circled the house, shining flashlights. One officer tried the front door. It was unlocked. They went in. I watched from my window, clutching Gus. 5 minutes later, an officer came to my door. His face was grim. "Ma'am, the house is empty. No one is here." "That's impossible. Their cars are gone?" "Gone. And so is all their furniture, their belongings. Everything. It looks like they left in one hell of a hurry." I insisted on seeing. The officer, perhaps seeing my genuine shock, let me stand in the doorway of 214. The emptiness was absolute. The single couch, the boxes, the potted plant, all gone. Every window in the house was cranked wide open, curtains flapping in the night breeze, as if trying to air out a terrible smell. The door to the basement was not just open. It was off its hinges, leaning against the wall. The wood around the lock was splintered outward. "We're not going down there without backup," the officer said, shining his light down the stairs. The beam illuminated the concrete floor. There, in the thick dust, were footprints. Large, bare, human-like footprints. They led from the bottom of the stairs across the floor to the far wall. And in that wall, behind where an old water heater had been pulled aside, was a jagged, dark hole. The cinder blocks had been broken inward, creating a passage just big enough for a large man to crawl through. The hole didn't lead outside. It led into the pitch-black space under the addition built onto the house decades ago, a sealed, forgotten crawl space. The police investigated. The family, Mark, Sarah, and Lily, were never found. No missing person report was ever filed by anyone else. It was as if they had never existed. The house is abandoned again, boarded up by the bank. The for sale sign is back, but it'll never sell. Sometimes, on the stillest nights, Gus still growls at the wall. And sometimes, I swear I see it. A tall, thin silhouette in the upstairs window, standing perfectly still, looking out at the world. Or looking at my house, waiting for the next family naive enough to think they're just buying a fixer-upper, and not a home that comes with a permanent hungry guest. The most dangerous prisons are not made of stone and lock, but of silence and fear. When something feels profoundly wrong, it is a warning to be heeded, not a curiosity to be ignored. Turning away from the suffering of others, even when clothed in the guise of not wanting to intrude, can make us complicit in their captivity. True neighborliness is not just about welcome muffins. It is the courage to see clearly, to ask hard questions, and to act when the whispers of distress cut through the quiet of a seemingly peaceful night. My name is Nina Reyes. I moved into the Parkview Terrace apartments in April, chasing a promotion and a fresh start. After 3 years in a crumbling walk-up with paper-thin walls, Parkview felt like a sanctuary. It was a solid red brick building with a tidy lobby and quiet hallways that smelled of lemon polish and quiet living. I met my neighbors quickly. Mrs. Gable in 3A brought me a pecan pie, her hands fluttering as she told me about the building's wonderful spirit. The couple in 2C, Ben and Shay, invited me for drinks. Everyone was friendly, talkative, normal. It was everything I'd wanted, except for the man in 3B. His door, directly opposite mine, was always slightly open, not welcomingly ajar, but cracked by 2 stubborn inches. It became my daily mystery. Sometimes, I'd glimpse the scuffed toe of a work boot, motionless on the floor just inside. Other times, I'd see the faint, dark suggestion of a shape standing back in the gloom, a silent sentinel. The first time I heard the click, I was locking my own door. It was a soft, metallic snick from across the hall. I turned, my heart jumping. The sliver of darkness in 3B's doorway seemed to stare back. "Hello?" I called, my voice too bright. Silence. It became a ritual. Every time I passed, the soft click of the peephole cover would follow my steps down the hall. Click, 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 with my stride. He was tracking me. I mentioned it to Mrs. Gable one afternoon. "Oh, that's just Mr. Clay," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "He's a quiet one. Keeps to himself. I think he works odd hours." She leaned in. "A bit odd, but harmless, I'm sure." Harmless. I tried to cling to that word. Then, one Tuesday after work, I found the note. A quick, furtive knock had sent me to the door. The hall was empty, but on my mat lay a single, folded sheet of white paper. The handwriting was a frantic, jagged scrawl, the ink dug deep into the fiber. "Don't trust the man in 3B. He watches." The paper trembled in my hand. Someone else knew. Someone else was scared too. The friendly facade of Parkview Terrace cracked open, revealing something cold and watching underneath. The note turned my fear into a solid, cold weight in my stomach. I called my friend Maya. "It's probably a prank," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Or a weird neighbor feud. Still, be careful. Use the chain." I did more than that. I bought a rubber doorstop and jammed it under the knob. That night, every creak of the old building was a footstep. Every whisper of the air conditioner was a breath. Then, around 2 a.m., I heard the real thing. Thud, thud, thud. Slow, heavy footsteps. They stopped right outside my door. I froze, the sheets clutched in my fists. I heard the subtle groan of the floorboard as weight settled against the wood. Then, the low, slow sound of breathing. A deliberate, audible exhale that seeped under the door. My own breath hitched. I was too terrified to move. Tap, tap, tap. 3 gentle, probing taps on the door. Not at knob height, but lower, as if someone was crouching there, testing the strength of the wood. A sound escaped my throat, a whimper of pure fear. The breathing stopped. After an agonizing minute, the heavy footsteps receded down the hall. I waited, shivering, for what felt like an hour before slinking out of bed. I pressed my eye to my own peephole. The hallway was dim and empty, but the door to 3B was wide open. For the first time, it gaped fully open, a perfect rectangle of pure, silent blackness. No light, no sound, no shadow of a boot. It was an invitation, or a threat. My blood ran cold. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was showing me the void he came from. At 7 a.m., I was in the building manager's office. Gary, a man with a perpetually weary expression, listened while I spilled the story. The door, the clicks, the note, the breathing. He frowned. "Miss Reyes, that's concerning. But apartment 3B is vacant. The tenant, Mr. Clay, moved out 2 months ago. We're between tenants." The floor seemed to tilt. "That's impossible. His door is always open. Someone is living there." Gary sighed, a long suffering sound. "Let's go take a look." We stood in the hall with Hector, the maintenance supervisor. Mrs. Gable peeked out, her face tight with worry. Gary used his master key on 3B. The door swung inward. The apartment was a ghost of a home. A sofa and armchair were shrouded in white sheets like sleeping statues. Dust coated every surface, the windowsills, the floor, a lone side table. The air was stale and cold. "See?" Gary said, a note of vindication in his voice. "Empty." But Hector stepped inside, his eyes on the floor. "Hold on." In the thick layer of dust, a clear trail of footprints began from a hallway leading to the bedrooms and traveled straight to the threshold. They were large, masculine prints from a boot or sneaker. They were fresh, sharp-edged, and alone. No other prints disturbed the dust. "Someone's been walking here," Hector said softly. "Recently." Gary's face went slack. He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police." Detective Ruiz arrived, a calm, no-nonsense woman. She examined the footprints, which led to a bedroom closet. The closet was empty save for a rumpled sleeping bag, a few empty water bottles, and wrappers from protein bars. A nest. "Squatter," she confirmed. She turned to me. "The note?" I handed her the folded paper in a plastic bag. She studied it. "Someone else in the building knew. Didn't want to get involved directly, but wanted to warn you." She looked at the other doors. Fear often works in whispers. With the police report filed and the locks on 3B changed, a tense calm settled over the third floor. But the mystery of the note gnawed at me. Who had left it? That person had been my silent guardian. I started paying closer attention. I thanked Ben and Shay for their support. "Did you ever see anything from that apartment?" I asked casually. Ben scratched his head. "You know, a few weeks ago I thought I heard a radio playing in there late at night. I figured the old tenant hadn't moved out yet. Didn't think much of it. I helped Mrs. Gable with her groceries." "It's just so frightening," she clucked. "To think he was right there. I told Gary we need better security lights." "The note was so strange," I ventured. "Any idea who might have written it?" Her eyes darted away. "Oh, honey, no, but we all notice things, don't we? We just don't always say." Her words hung in the air. We all notice things. The breakthrough came from Leo, the quiet man in 1A who cared for his elderly mother. I found him struggling with a bag of recycling. As I helped him, I mentioned how grateful I was for the anonymous note. He went very still. His hands shook. I just knew you were new," he stammered, not meeting my eyes. "You seemed nice. He had a key. I saw him use it on the service entrance. He didn't belong." My breath caught. "You saw him?" Leo nodded, a quick, bird-like motion. "Many times. Late. He'd just stand in the hallway, listening. I was afraid for my mother. The note, it was all I could do." Tears of shame or fear welled in his eyes. "I'm not brave." "You were brave enough," I said, my voice thick. "Thank you, Leo." He had given the police a description. A man in a dark hoodie, average build, moving with quiet purpose. He'd had a key. That changed everything. This wasn't a random homeless person finding an open door. This was someone with access, with intention. Detective Ruiz followed the key lead. The former tenant, Mr. Clay, was a long-haul trucker. When pressed, he admitted an old roommate, a cousin named Derek, had never returned a key after a bitter argument a year ago. Derek had recent arrests for trespassing. The pieces fit. Derek knew the apartment was vacant. He had a key. He'd been using it as a free flophouse. My arrival, a new observant neighbor directly across the hall, had threatened his sanctuary. The taps on my door weren't just menace. They were the rage of a cornered animal being displaced. A warrant was issued, but Derek had vanished back into the city's shadows. The building installed a key fob system. Gary was replaced. 3B was rented to a loud, cheerful family with a baby. I changed too. I installed a steel security bar for my door. I took a self-defense class. My friendship with Leo became a quiet understanding. We'd share a nod, a silent acknowledgement of the fear we'd witnessed, and the small, fragile act of courage that had passed between us. One evening, months later, I came home. I used my key fob, heard the solid thunk of the lobby door locking. The hallway was bright. From behind the door of 3B, I heard the sound of a baby laughing. At my own door, I paused. I didn't just unlock it and rush in. I looked at the frame. I listened. Then I went inside, engaged the deadbolt, and slid the security bar into its bracket with a definitive clunk. The sound wasn't fear anymore. It was a ritual of vigilance. The man in 3B was gone, but the lesson remained, etched into my mind as clearly as those footprints in the dust. Safety is not a condition, but a practice. It is built on trusting your instincts, on the courage to see clearly, and on the understanding that sometimes the most important warnings come in whispers from those too afraid to speak aloud. True safety is not the absence of threat, but the presence of awareness. Trust your intuition. It is your first and finest line of defense. A community's strength lies not only in friendly greetings, but in the willingness to speak uncomfortable truths and protect one another. Silence protects only those who mean harm. Courage, even when it comes as a whisper, can be the loudest sound in the dark. I bought the house because I wanted quiet. After the divorce, after the noise of lawyers and paperwork and people telling me what I should feel, I wanted space that didn't ask questions. The farmhouse sat on 5 acres of land outside of Pine Hollow, the kind of rural town that existed mostly as a name on a map and a blinking caution light. No street lamps, no sidewalks, just trees, fences, and long stretches of road where you could drive for 10 minutes without seeing another set of headlights. The realtor warned me about winter. "Storms roll through hard out here," she said, tapping the clipboard against her palm. "Power lines go down, roads close. You gotta be comfortable being alone." I told her I was, and most of the time, I was telling the truth. January came in sharp and early that year. Snow fell in thick, dry sheets that swallowed sound and erased landmarks. When the blizzard warning came through on the radio, I stocked up on firewood, charged my phone, filled the bathtub with water. Old habits from growing up rural kicked in automatically. By evening, the wind was screaming. The power cut out just after 9. The house went silent all at once. No heater hum, no refrigerator click. Just the sound of the storm throwing itself against the walls. I lit candles and pulled on every sweater I owned, settling on the couch with blankets tucked tight around me. The nearest neighbor, Tom, lived about half a mile down the road. We waved sometimes, shared small talk at the mailbox. That was it. By midnight, the snow was already knee-deep. That's when I heard footsteps. At first, I told myself it was an animal. Deer pass through the property sometimes. Coyotes, too. You get used to unfamiliar noises when you live far from people. But these footsteps weren't erratic or light. They crunched, slow, measured, heavy enough to compress the snow completely. They moved along the side of the house. I sat up straighter, every nerve in my body pulling tight. The wind rattled the windows, but the sound underneath it stayed steady. Someone, or something, was walking close. Too close. Then came the scraping, a soft, deliberate drag against the siding. Not random, not hurried. I stood and moved toward the living room window, my heart thudding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I lifted the corner of the curtain just enough to look out. At first, there was nothing but blowing white. Then I saw him. A tall figure stood at the edge of the trees, half swallowed by shadow. Heavy coat. Hood pulled low. He wasn't moving. Just watching the house. Watching me. I dropped below the sill so fast my knees hit the floor. My hands shook uncontrollably, my breath coming in shallow pulls. I counted silently. 10, 20, 30. When I looked again, he was gone. Relief barely had time to settle before I saw movement closer to the house. He stood beside my car now. He placed one hand on the hood, pressing down just enough to leave a perfect handprint in the frost. Then he stepped back, retreating into the dark like he'd never been there at all. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. No connection. I tried again. The call failed halfway through a ring. The storm had taken the towers. My chest felt tight, panic blooming fast and hot. The footsteps returned. This time they stopped at the kitchen door. The handle jiggled. Not violently, not desperate. Testing. I stood frozen in the hallway, gripping the fireplace poker like it could actually help me. The handle turned once more, then stilled. Minutes passed, or hours. Time lost its shape. Then headlights cut through the storm. A truck pulled into my driveway, tires grinding against packed snow. Someone jumped out, shouting my name. It was Tom. I unlocked the door and nearly collapsed when I saw him. He ushered me inside his truck cab warmth briefly before insisting we look around. He swept his flashlight across the yard. Tracks covered the snow. They circled the house, every window, the garage, the car. Tom frowned, crouching low. "These are fresh," he said slowly, "on top of the snowfall." I swallowed. "Where do they lead?" He scanned the darkness. "They don't. There were no tracks coming in from the road. None from the woods. Only the ones circling my house." Tom straightened, unease written plainly on his face. "Lila, something ain't right." We stayed together until dawn. The storm eased by morning. No sign of anyone. No explanation that made sense. The sheriff came later, took notes, offered platitudes. Couldn't explain the tracks either. Life returned to normal, but I didn't. I replaced locks, installed cameras, slept with lights on. And sometimes, during heavy snowfalls, I thought I heard footsteps again, just beyond the glow of the porch light, waiting. Spring came late. I never saw him again. But I sold the house that summer. Some places hold memories you don't want to keep. When I drive past open fields now, when storms roll in thick and quiet, I remember those tracks. Perfect circles in the snow, no beginning, no end. I used to believe routines were harmless, necessary, even. They made life efficient, predictable, safe. That was before I learned that predictability is not the same thing as security. I'm the kind of person people describe as low profile. I don't draw attention. I don't overshare. I pay my rent early and keep my headphones on in public. I thought that made me invisible. Turns out, it just made me easy to study. My life fit into clean, repeatable patterns. Wake up before sunrise. Coffee strong enough to burn. News muted because the noise made my chest tight. Same shoes. Same jacket, same staircase, same timing, down to the minute. I didn't know someone else was memorizing it. I didn't know that my consistency was being treated like a script. The building was old and narrow, 4 floors stacked like a filing cabinet that had been dropped too many times. Sound carried badly. If someone sneezed on the 3rd floor, you heard it on the 1st. That's how I knew when someone moved into Unit 3B. There was no moving truck, no dragging furniture, no awkward knocks asking for help with a couch. Just a strip of masking tape appeared on the door one morning, the ink slightly smudged. Unit 3, BR, Hale. I stood there longer than necessary, reading it twice like it might change. I saw him once that first week. We passed on the stairs. He was tall, mid-30s maybe, wearing a gray jacket that didn't stand out. His face didn't either. Brown hair, brown eyes, the kind of person you forget immediately after seeing. Except he smiled like he recognized me. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I replied, automatically. His timing was odd. He stepped out of his apartment seconds after I did, close enough that I felt his presence behind me but not close enough to feel threatened. At first, it felt normal. Coincidences happen. People leave for work around the same time, but coincidence doesn't keep pace when you slow down. The first real test was the stairs. I stopped halfway down to retie my shoe. I wasn't rushing. I wanted to see what would happen. Behind me, the footsteps stopped too. No shuffling, no weight shift, just stillness. I waited. So did he. When I stood back up, the footsteps resumed, perfectly spaced, like an echo that knew exactly when to follow. I told myself I was being paranoid. Stress does that. Living alone does that. Then things inside my apartment started changing. Small things, wrong things. My favorite mug was moved from the left side of the sink to the right. My coat was hanging inside out. My alarm tone changed. Same model phone, same default ringtone I'd heard through the wall when his phone rang. I started taking pictures before bed. Door locked, deadbolt engaged, chain secured. Still, I woke up tired. Like someone had been watching me sleep, memorizing how my chest rose and fell. One night, I heard him practicing. At first I thought he was on the phone. Then I realized he was repeating my voice. Not mocking, studying. He mimicked the pauses, the breath I took before speaking, the way my voice dipped at the end of sentences. I pressed my ear to the wall. "I'm fine," he whispered. My words, my voice. I confronted him in the hallway the next morning. My hands were shaking, but my voice stayed steady. "Are you copying me?" He looked genuinely confused. "I don't sound like you," he said. Then, after a moment, he smiled. "Not yet." That's when other people started acting strange. My coworker asked if I'd changed something about my appearance. I hadn't. A barista insisted I'd already picked up my order. My phone log showed outgoing calls I didn't remember making. Long conversations where I spoke confidently, clearly, like someone more decisive than me. I checked my reflection constantly. It started lagging. A blink delayed. A smile that came a second too late. I stopped trusting mirrors. I came home early one afternoon. My door was open. Inside, I heard movement. Furniture shifting. Someone humming. Then I heard my laugh. Perfect. Familiar. Effortless. He walked out wearing my jacket. Didn't run. Didn't panic. "You're early today," he said. I screamed. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You live so carefully," he said. "It takes effort to wear someone properly." The police found nothing. No lease, no fingerprints, no record of our Hale ever existing. They said Unit 3B had been empty. After that, reality thinned. I moved without deciding to. Spoke without thinking. It felt like my actions were being rehearsed somewhere else first. The final morning, I woke up on my couch. Across the hall, Unit 3B was open. Inside was my life. On the wall, written in my handwriting. Asterisk, asterisk, "You can rest now. I've got it." Asterisk, asterisk, "The landlord says I moved out weeks ago." Everyone agrees. They say I seemed happier. The scariest thing isn't being watched. It's being understood so completely that someone else can step into your life and no one notices the difference. Routines create comfort but unchecked. They also create vulnerability. When you stop questioning the familiar, you stop protecting yourself. Pay attention to who's watching, and never assume that being quiet makes you invisible. Sometimes, it just makes you replaceable. I used to think time moved forward in clean lines. One day followed another. Cause led to effect. If something happened, there was always a reason you could point to, even if it was uncomfortable. I don't believe that anymore. Somewhere along the way, my days started slipping. Not dramatically at first, just enough to make me feel tired in a way sleep didn't fix. Like I was always arriving late to my own life. I lived alone because I liked the quiet. Because I needed control over my space. Same grocery store, same walking route, same hours. I thought that made things simpler. I didn't know I was being measured against a future version of myself. The calendar was the first thing that felt wrong. It was taped inside my kitchen cabinet, right above the coffee mugs, yellowed paper, old wire binding, the kind you'd expect to see in a garage or basement, not a rental unit that had been repainted twice in 10 years. A date was circled in red. Tomorrow. I assumed it belonged to a previous tenant. People leave strange things behind. Notes, nails in walls, scratches on doors you don't want to ask about. I left it there. That night, I heard footsteps. They came from the wall I shared with the vacant unit next door. Slow pacing, back and forth, heavy enough to feel intentional. When I pressed my ear to the wall, the sound stopped immediately. Like it knew. The landlord had told me the unit was empty. No power, no water, no repairs finished. I reminded myself of that as I went to bed. At 2:13 a.m., I heard knocking, not on my door, on the wall. 3 taps, a pause, 3 more. I stayed silent. The knocking continued until my hands went numb. The next morning, there was a note under my door. Sorry, wrong night. After that, my days stopped lining up properly. I woke up already exhausted. I found dishes in the sink I didn't remember using. My phone battery drained overnight with apps open I hadn't touched. One voicemail stopped me cold. My voice whispered, asterisk, he's listening now, asterisk, timestamp, tomorrow. I finally saw him on a Tuesday afternoon. The door to the vacant unit creaked open as I carried groceries inside. A man stood there, thin, pale, eyes too alert. You're late today, he said. I asked him who he was. He hesitated. Your neighbor. Eventually, when I reported him, police found nothing. Empty unit, no signs of life. But the air inside was warm, lived in. The knocking returned, this time at my door. I'm not here yet, he said calmly through the wood. Once I am, it gets easier. The calendar began changing. Dates crossed out ahead of time. Notes in my handwriting warning me about myself. This is when you stop trusting mirrors. Reflections lagged. I saw him behind me before he was physically there. I dreamed his apartment furnished with my life. Photos of me taken from angles I didn't recognize. He wasn't stalking me. He was remembering me. I woke one night to find him sitting at my kitchen table. You're catching up, he said gently. That's dangerous. I asked what happened when I reached his day. That's when I move out, he said. And you move in. I understood then that he wasn't replacing me. I was becoming him. The police found my apartment empty the next morning. No signs of struggle, just the calendar. Today circled in red. The unit next door finally had its lights on, and someone inside was unpacking my life. When you live on autopilot, you stop noticing when your life starts moving without you. Pay attention to your days. Question what feels normal, because the moment you stop owning your time, someone else may decide to live it for you. I chose the house because it was quiet. It sat on the edge of a modest suburban street, identical to the others except for a slightly leaning mailbox and a maple tree whose roots had cracked the sidewalk. Nothing about it stood out. That was the point. I wanted a place where days blended together, where no one paid attention to who came and went. For most of my adult life, I believed anonymity was safety. I worked predictable hours. I bought groceries on Sundays. I watered the lawn on Wednesdays. The kind of routine people fall into without realizing it's happening. I told myself it was discipline, stability, proof that I had my life together. I didn't know routines could be studied. I didn't know consistency could invite someone in. And I didn't know how easy it was for another person to learn the shape of my life well enough to wear it. The first time I noticed him, it barely registered. I stepped outside at 6:45 a.m., briefcase in hand, coffee cooling too fast in my travel mug. Across the street, my neighbor stood on his porch holding a mug of his own. He wasn't drinking it, just holding it, watching. He didn't wave. I nodded, more out of habit than friendliness, and walked to my car. In the side mirror, I saw him still standing there. The next morning, he was there again. Same spot, same mug, same stillness. I started to notice patterns. If I left early, he was already outside. If I overslept, his porch light flicked on right before I opened my door. When I came home late, his silhouette appeared at the edge of his porch as I turned the corner. I told myself he was retired, lonely, maybe bored. That explanation worked until it didn't. The first thing that changed was my trash bin. I rolled it out one evening and noticed it had been moved closer to his fence. Not much. Just a foot or two. Enough to feel intentional. Then my gate was unlatched. Twice. I installed a porch camera. A week later, it was angled downward, just enough to miss the sidewalk. That night, he spoke to me. "You left at 6:52 today," he said casually. "Traffic must have been bad." I froze. He smiled like we were discussing the weather. The notes appeared after that. Not threats. Corrections. "You usually lock the back door. You didn't eat dinner Tuesday. You forgot your light on." I stopped sleeping. I started doubting myself. Once, I heard footsteps outside my bedroom wall, pacing in time with my breathing. When police found nothing, he smiled the next morning. "You slept better last night," he said. I realized then that the worst part wasn't being watched. It was being known. I began changing my routine deliberately, leaving at random times, turning lights on and off unpredictably. He adjusted faster than I could. "You're tired," he said once. "That's why you're slipping." I hated that he was right. The more I tried to escape my routine, the less I trusted myself. The more I relied on his observations to know what I had done. He wasn't following me anymore. He was maintaining me. The final night, I confronted him. "I want you to stop," I said. He looked genuinely surprised. "But I'm keeping everything running," he said calmly. "You were losing track." That's when I understood. He wasn't replacing me. He was becoming the version of me that functioned better than I did, and I was letting him. Routine can bring comfort, but when you stop questioning it, you stop protecting yourself. Pay attention to who notices your patterns. Pay attention to who benefits from knowing your life better than you do. Because the most dangerous thing isn't being watched. It's slowly forgetting who your life belongs to. Buying my first house was supposed to mean independence. That's what I told everyone. That I was done with thin apartment walls, noisy neighbors, and the sense that my life was always overlapping someone else's. I wanted space, privacy, a place where nothing happened unless I invited it. The realtor described the neighborhood as quiet. She said it like a promise. The street curved gently instead of running straight, which made it feel enclosed, insulated from the rest of the town. Most of the houses looked lived in but not loved. Lawns trimmed, blinds drawn, porches used more for storage than sitting. And at the very end of the street was the house that never changed. No lights, no decorations, no cars. Just peeling paint and a roof sagging slightly, like the structure was tired of holding itself together. I didn't think much of it then. I didn't know that stillness could be intentional. The first knock came 3 weeks after I moved in. It was late. After 10, the kind of late where any noise feels deliberate. The knock itself was careful, 3 taps, evenly spaced. Not urgent, not casual. When I opened the door, a man stood on my porch. He was thin, mid-40s maybe, wearing a jacket that looked older than it should have been. His smile was polite, rehearsed. His eyes, though, didn't settle on my face. They drifted past me, scanning the hallway behind my shoulder. "Sorry to bother you so late," he said. "I live down the street, end house." Of course he did. "I was wondering if you had some water. My pipes are acting up." It felt reasonable, neighborly. I filled a bottle and handed it over. His fingers brushed mine, lingering half a second too long. "Thank you," he said. "You're usually home around this time." I laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, guess so." He nodded, like that confirmed something, and left. I stood there longer than I needed to, listening to his footsteps fade. He came back 3 nights later. Batteries this time, then food. Always after dark, always calm, always unsurprised to see me. Once, when I hesitated before opening the door, he smiled through the glass. "I know you're home," he said gently. That was the first night I didn't sleep. I started noticing small things. My trash cans shifted closer to the street. A porch light turned off that I didn't remember switching. Doors that closed too easily or resisted just slightly when they hadn't before.